Hello everyone, Tommy Norman, Chief Agility Officer at Ackland Avenue, and I'm here with Esther Derby. Esther, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Talking to us. It's been a long week. I know everybody's tired. What have you been talking about this week? What's the passion that you've brought to Agile 2022?
Well, I did a luminary session this time, which is kind of an unscripted thing.
Right.
And I think the way I framed it was that what I really care about is making workplaces more humane. That's what really matters to me.
Right. I think
Agile
that was
can
set
be part of
with
it.
Kelsey Hightower, kind of set that empathy thing at the keynote.
Sure. So we had kind of a wide-ranging conversation about, what that might mean, what a humane workplace might mean, and then we talked about change and how to nurture change in organizations.
And so, with that, we just came out of a hard 2 years and things like that. How do you think the last 2 years specifically, kind of that topic really resonates with that that situation we've been in?
So I was having a conversation a few weeks ago with some folks who are very interested in changing the way work works and changing the workplace. And one of the things that came up was that one of the underlying assumptions of management has always been that people can't be trusted. We have to push them to work hard. We have to always have our eye on them and push them to make sure they work hard. And if you were paying attention, our big experiment in remote work proved that that's not the case. Lots of good work got done without seeing that, people were at their desks or being able to watch over them all the time. So in some ways, we can put that whole idea to rest. Or at least some of us can. I mean, the people who responded to it by installing surveillance software on everybody's machine kind of went the opposite direction and lowered trust. But I think if we can get over that idea and say, oh yeah, people, given the right conditions, are going to give discretionary effort. They're going to give their best. I think that could be an interesting shift.
Well, and also your definition of what and how work gets done has to change a little bit. We believe you come in at 8 and you do the thing and you take a break and then you go home at 5 and not everybody works that way.
Well, very few people work that way, and particularly in creative work, which is most of what we do. Right. Your brain is at its best when it's at its best, not necessarily on some rigid schedule.
Right.
I frankly don't care if people spend part of their day sitting on the couch playing video games, as long as the stuff that needs to get done is getting done. I mean, that could be a refreshing break, to get someone's brain back in gear or get shift to another kind of mental state, or allow something to percolate. But up until now, many people have not viewed it that way. It's you're slacking off. So.
Well, and that's I've seen a lot of people talking about outcomes over output. Measuring value versus just measuring effort. And I think one of the things that exposed that I know I had kind of naively found out very early on is nobody knows how to measure value. All the people are saying we need to build this thing because it's very valuable, and you go, is it? Why? And well, because I'm an executive and I'm, and I said so. And I'm like, okay, I'm very much held to, did I put in 40 hours? Did I do this? Did I do this? But then when I do the thing, nobody's really held as accountable individually to, did it do the thing we thought it was going to do?
And they don't know how to measure productivity either, right? So they measure the appearance of productivity. So looking busy, be there for long hours. But of course, all that went out the window.
Everybody reacts mostly out of fear. We're all animals. We're all just, evolved a little bit. And I'm afraid. So even management, any manager is afraid of something. Why are you so afraid to not trust people, to not let that happen? And what do we need to do to make you not afraid? You think you want these timesheets and things that show me that. So what can we provide people like that to make them not afraid?
Well, what are managers afraid of?
Right.
Well, they're afraid of being blamed when somebody's desire is not met in the time they desire it to be met. right? So they're afraid of being blamed. They're afraid of having their career limited in some way. So if we can get rid of blame and replace it with curiosity, so what's going on that this didn't happen the way we hoped or wished it would? Well, maybe it's not the problem with the people doing the work. Maybe our wishes were unrealistic. That part of the equation often doesn't get examined.
Well, it also comes back to, we know we're going to be wrong most of the time, to some degree, a lot. And so then the short feedback loop becomes the key thing of, okay, it's okay if I'm wrong, if it's little wrongs. If it's a big wrong, then yeah, maybe not. If it takes 8 months and a lot of money to figure out I was wrong, that's not good. It doesn't matter how many hours we put in there.
Yeah.
But if I can do little ones and learn from it, maximize, value through learning. Mm-hmm. But, that means failure, and that scares people. So
because they're afraid they'll be blamed.
Right. That's interesting that blame is the thing. How do we get away from that?
Yeah, well, people, if they're being held to some expectation, whatever it is, whether it's realistic or not, and they feel their status might be lowered or it's going to damage their career. I mean, it's normal for people to feel vulnerable in that sort of situation. And one of the responses to feeling vulnerable is to displace that onto someone else through blame.
Right. I had a recent, just even personally, I had a recent shift, and I'm doing kind of a new role. And it has new KPIs, new OKRs with it. And even I should know better because I tell these people, not to use things this way. But then I found myself going, all right, I need to do this thing because it's going to make that thing look better. And I'm like, I should know better. But it is human nature. And it's almost like we have to, how do we set up some guardrails to prevent that from happening? That's an interesting take. So what do you think, what have you seen everybody else talking about as you've walked around and heard conversations or seen kind of what people are talking about?
One of the most fascinating things I've seen this conference, and it's something I also care deeply about, is, we as a community, we've spent a long time talking about what we should do, how we should do it. And there were 2 talks, at least, and I think I touched on it in various ways, about how do we create the conditions where it's possible for people to do that.
Right.
So I thought that was fascinating. Like, how do you create the conditions for a team where it's possible for them to really do great software? So Jessica Kerr talked about that, and Bethany Andre Speck talked about that. And I thought that was... So I'm considering 2 a trend in this case. I mean, maybe 2 it does make a trend, but
2, it's like Backstreet Boys. One doesn't make much sense, but you put 2 of them together, you start getting something. So more of the environment, and that seems to, again, some of the other things we've talked about, fear and safety and things like that, is the environment you're in and the culture you're in. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things you've heard when people are saying, how do we build that type of environment? Especially in this age where, it is harder to build, I don't really have an environment. I don't have a office.
You have many environments.
Right.
You have distributed environments. So I think about, and I've talked about this before, that the things I think about are clarity, conditions, and constraints. So, and I find that a useful way for people to kind of think about the things they need to think about and execute on to create a situation where good work is going to be likely. So clarity has to do with, do people understand what they're working on, why, how it fits in, the difference it makes for their customers, all of that sort of things. Because that sort of clarity eliminates a lot of irrelevant conflict.
Right.
And the conditions mean that people have what they need to do their work, which surprisingly is not always the case, right? They're just lacking tools or equipment or knowledge or connections to expertise or whatever it is to actually do their work. And then constraints, tell them you can make whatever decision you want to within this boundary.
Right.
And if you bump up against the boundary, then we have a conversation. And that also eliminates certain kinds of conflicts, and it stops a lot of flailing.
Right.
So that's kind of the shorthand I use to talk about how do we create those environments where it's more likely that people are going to be able to do great work.
Right. And just, and you're right, process has been a big part of this for a long time. And I also think as Agile has become, the thing. There's not a lot of people saying, yeah, we do waterfall anymore. Everybody's doing,
The
we're saying
Agile.
the Agile, big A, little a, whatever it is. But I think it's kind of been diluted down to Scrum rules.
Well,
And that,
yeah.
well, in a lot
Yeah,
of new
yeah.
people's eyes, the easiest way to consume it is, oh, there's a set of prescriptive rules I follow, and nothing against Scrum, but I do that and magic
Yeah.
happens, and we're like, okay, but you're kind of missing the point. That's not it's not the thing. It's the thing that gets you to the thing.
Related to that, I think what also happens is, there's an existing system, right? Structures, reward systems, beliefs about how work happens and everything. And that's what has engendered the current results. Right? The current system engenders the current results. And so this is all there. And then someone comes in and paints the Agile on top of it. And unless you address these factors, they are going to reassert themselves. The same pattern is going to perpetuate.
Right.
And I think that's been an issue for a long time and continues to be, especially when people say, oh, it's just a set of prescriptive rules if we follow those. No, the pattern will reassert itself.
Right. And I like, I've always been a big Kanban and Lean guy, and I like that, it respects what's there now. Let's respect what's here now, but let's try to make it better, and then let's also just find good ways to make the system visible, and the system will reveal itself. It will show you that, hey, here's where things kind of get mucked up, so let's fix that. And you might fix that with Scrum, you might fix that with XP, you might fix that with whatever.
With managing differently.
Sure, because if it's compensation, there's nothing in any guide that talks about compensation models, but a compensation model can totally dictate exactly how everybody acts.
It's just like the way jobs descriptions can, all sorts of those things can cause certain patterns.
So that's that to me, when people do talk about little a and big A, but that is to me is an agile company, is that it's in every facet of the things you do, or and whether you call it agile or what, I don't think most people shouldn't care, because it's I like to say when somebody says we can't do Scrum or we can't do Kanban, I'm like, replace that with continuous improvement and ethical treatment of people. Does that sound nice when you say that? We can't continuously improve. We can't ethically treat our people nicely. It sounds pretty silly when you say it that way.
Yeah.
So what do you think, where are we going? What are we going to be, if we sit down and do this a couple of years from now, what is going to be the topic, or what would you love to see the topic be?
Well, I have no earthly idea what the world is going to be like in 2 years. I mean, I'm sure there was some virologist working somewhere who knew that a pandemic was quite likely, and it was just a matter of time. But I don't think, as the general population, that was top of mind. So I can't predict, but I would hope that we have continued focus on how do we create the conditions where people can do great work.
Right.
I mean, we know the how of it, right? In many ways, we know how to build good software. We have the practices, we have the tools, we have the smarts. We just need the conditions where that's the default. Right. Where it's easy to do great software instead of, a monumental struggle.
And I'm wondering, because, like I frame a company that for a decade we were remote, we were born remote, we've never been anything else, we're distributed across multiple countries. So it really didn't affect us as much. We also had multiple, we had swarming around, so if anybody got sick or anything like that, we could really handle it. And so I know there's also companies who weren't built that way. They went distributed, and it seems like they're doing the bare minimum to still allow that, because of, like, people won't come back. But until you embrace it as a company and think, maybe like organizationally I should be different, physically, maybe I don't need a big office everybody goes to. Maybe I have satellite offices. Maybe I, have little, these remote working places, collaboration places that I can rent, a system that's like that. But I think it's not consistent. It's not in one place where I can look at it and observe it. And again, it scares people. So it would be interesting to see the business side of this change a lot as well.
Yeah, well, I wonder how scared the people in the commercial real estate market are.
Well, in Nashville, they're loving it right now because we're on the rise, but I don't know how long that can go.
Yeah, who knows?
But, I heard that so many times where people, right before the pandemic, we just built an office. We just built this huge collaborative space, and it's beautiful, and there's nobody in it. And so they were just waiting for everything to be over to bring everybody back in. And so I think even now, as they're starting to bring people in, when they said everybody come back in, I've had so many people just say, well, I quit because I could find remote work anywhere else. And so they have to take that investment and, maybe you got to cut your losses and find another way. That'll be really interesting to see
I
how
think
that
it'd be
forms.
really interesting.
Well, thank you so much for being with us
Well,
today.
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And I hope I'm about to lose my voice. I've got a couple of more interviews. So I hope you recover as well.
I can leave you with some cough drops.
I might need to get some.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for speaking to us. Everybody,
Sure.
thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.